Bukhara, the capital of the former Khanate or Emirate of the same name, is located between the rivers Amu Darya and Sir Darya. Its dominion was bounded by Russia, Afghanistan, and India. After the Russian conquest of Central Asia in 1866, Bukhara became a tributary of Russia and a large portion of its territory was incorporated into the newly created government of Russian Turkestan, 1868. In ancient times this region was part of the Persian and Bactrian empires. It was conquered by the Arabs in the 8th century and became the residence of the Samanid Empire in the 9th century. The invading Mongols devastated the area at the beginning of the 13th century, but at the end of the 14th century it flourished under Timur with Samarkand as the capital. After the Russian Revolution of 1917, Bukhara remained a semi-independent emirate until the flight of its last ruler, Mir Alim Khan, 1910-20. His regime was replaced by the Bukharan People's Republic until it was integrated into the Soviet Union as the Bukharan People's Soviet Republic in 1924. Toward the end of 1924 it was transformed into the Bukharsky Oblast of the Uzbek SSR, including the city of Bukhara. While the Turkmen SSR and the Tadjik SSR, until 1929 the Tadjik SSR, absorbed portions of Bukhara's former territory. Bukharan Jews or Central Asian Jews are roughly synonymous terms. They refer to Jews who speak Tadjiki, a Persian dialect with Turkic admixture, which is also spoken by the native mountain tribes and large sections of the urban population, as well as most inhabitants of the Tadjik SSR. The indigenous Bukharan or Central Asian Jews are called so in contrast to the Russian Jews, admitted to Bukhara since 1863, or the Jewish refugees from Western and Central Europe who in World War II, fled from the Nazis to Uzbekistan and the other Central Asian republics. The sparseness of statistical data regarding the Bukharan Jews is attributable to the fact that the Soviet Union is whittling away national minorities and religious groups. Thus, the Russian census of 1926 was the only one to give a breakdown of various Jewish ethnic groups, while in the census of 1939, they are listed as a single community. Further data is available since, through Stalinist no measures, statistically, the Jews were no longer considered a separate less than nationality. The total number of Persian-speaking Jews amounted to some 200,000 people before World War II. About half of them formerly lived in Iran, but many emigrated to Israel. Approximately 8,000 reside in Afghanistan, and about 60,000 in Bukhara and former Russian Turkestan superscript 1. According to the medieval traveler, Benjamin of Tudela, the Jews numbered some 50,000 people in Samarkand and some 7,000 in Khiva, Krame. President Ben-Zvi quotes the number of Jews for Bukhara as 15,000 and for Samarkand as 12,000 right after the Russian Revolution of 1917. Presumably, most of these were indigenous Jews. According to the Russian census of 1926, there were 18,868 native Jews in Central Asia, including 10,000 in Samarkand cubed. Elsewhere the number of Bukharan Jews was estimated at 30,000, including 10,000 in Bukhara. In addition, there were, in 1926, 25,866 Mountain Jews or Judeo-Tats of Dagestan in the Transcaucasus who spoke Dati, a Persian subdialect. A few individuals who emigrated from Derbent to Palestine before and shortly after World War I are now living in Israel. In 1926 the Central Asian Jews used to live mostly in cities, 97.9%, and speak their language, 93.8%, i.e., Tadjiki and, to a lesser degree, various Turkic dialects. They also had a fair command of Hebrew. Their literacy in any language was surprisingly low, 24.2%, as compared to the Russian Jews, 72.3%, or the Russian national average, 39.6%. This may be explained by the fact that boys usually did not attend school beyond the age of 8 years when they were taken into the business of their father. Girls usually receive no schooling at all. The Bukharan Jews are settled in the following cities: in the Uzbek SSR, Andizan, Bukhara, Karshi, Katakurgan, Kerman, Kokand, Marjlan, Namangan, Shakhrashyabs, and Tashkent. In the Tajik SSR, Gisar and Leninabad, formerly Khodzent; in the Turkmen SSR, Caliph and Kirki; in the Kyrgyz SSR, Osh; in the Kazakh SSR, Kymkent, Jambul, formerly Olyata, and Turkestan. Origin: Joseph Wolff, who visited Bukhara in 1832 and 1844, reports that the Bukharan Jews claim to be descendants of the 10 tribes of Israel. Wolff also adds, the tradition is an old one at Bukhara, that some of the 10 tribes are in China, a view which has been supported by several later writers, but disproved conclusively by the fact that the early Jewish community in Kaifeng arrived in China between the 9th and 10th centuries by the sea route. This does not preclude, however, that individual Jews from Bukhara reached China at a later date. We have reports that some merchants actually entered China by the land route, and 5 Jewish families from Bukhara settled in Kashgar at the beginning of this century. Adler, who collected some 70 Hebrew and Judeo-Persian manuscripts in Bukhara, 1897, states that their family names prove that many Bukharan Jews came from Persia via Merv and some from Khiva. According to a tradition among the Jews of Bukhara, the re-establishment of their community took place at the beginning of the 14th century, when they immigrated from Persia. It appears unlikely that any Jews from earlier times survived there. George Curzon, later Viceroy of India, describes the Bukharan Jews as singularly handsome people of mild features and benign aspects. Juchelson praises them. So good a reputation have they won by their honorable and upright dealings that the Russian merchants rely implicitly on their words. S. Weisenberg, who took anthropological measurements on 150 Jews from Bukhara, Samarkand, and Herat, concluded that they, as well as the Caucasus Jews, are essentially a uniform type. He further states that they resemble the Persian Jews but, in contrast to them, are more round-headed. The Jews in Bukhara lived in ghettos, partly because they were compelled to do so and partly to protect themselves against frequent fanatical outbursts of Muslim mobs. Confined to the ghetto and forbidden to enter the city after sunset, they were debarred from the occupation of new buildings. Even within their ghettos, although they could repair existing synagogues, they were forbidden to build new ones. The Bukharan Jews were exempted from military service but had to pay a poll tax, jizya, for every adult. Evidence of a Jew in court in the case of a Muslim was inadmissible, even if such evidence favored the Muslim litigant. On the other hand, family disputes and disputes from testamentary disposition were tried by a rabbi and his religious court, Beth Din, alone. In important civil matters, the principal tax collector, Kalantar, and his deputy also sat in court. The decisions of the rabbi were upheld and enforced by the Muslim judge, Qadi. If necessary, no Turkoman slave raider would kidnap Jews because no Muslim would buy a Jewish slave. Like their Muslim neighbors, the Bukharan Jews practiced polygamy, which ended, however, with the advent of the Russians. In their own homes, the Jewish women mingled freely with the men, but out of doors they dressed like Muslim women and wore the traditional horsehair veil to avoid troubles. Trade brought the Bukharan Jews to many lands, including India, Afghanistan, and China. In addition to the Russian market cities, they used to trade in carpets, furs, and silk. They raised cotton, grapes, and tobacco, and operated most of the dyeing, while some made their living as physicians and druggists. 2 Bukharan synagogues are more than 500 years old.